Okay, so let's do MBAs. And the
Okay.
reason for MBAs is because I think it's something that we both talked about at the beginning of our careers. We've
hmm
had discussions about it probably in the past year or two ago. And I've also had this come up again in the last month. So, high level, right? We both have our bachelor's degree. We've both looked into, is an MBA worth it? And a lot of the times that question is driven off the fact that a 2 year program, usually full time, could be maybe $50,000 a year, um, or even more than that. So let's say on the low, you're looking at $100,000 investment where you also can't work during that time, plus whatever the expenses are on top of
Just
eating, living,
yeah,
books, things like
and not
that.
able to work, which is hard.
Exactly. Is it worth it? Right. And yeah, I'll kind of leave it there. Like, what's been your relationship with evaluating, is an MBA worth it? And where are you at today with, is it worth something to pursue?
That's a hard one. I think so. I did it twice. I did a very cheap just to get the paper type of degree, but before that, the university I work with, I'm able to get it for free, but it's time. It's my quality of work dropped because I was doing school, and I picked if I'm gonna get fired because my quality of work dropped, that means school wasn't worth it, you know? And more analyzing, the more people I talk to, probably in the medical director field, I was able to chat with one about a month ago. We just crossed paths, and he was telling me that I don't even look at masters anymore because I'd rather look at experience. And within my industry, it's weird. So a little bit brief history. When we were going to school, um, athletic training was an entry level like bachelor's program. You get in, you get your degree, you can get your certification. That'd be it. But now they pivoted in 2022, 2020, yeah, 2020. They pivoted to an entry level master's. So you have to do all this stuff, and to get your entry level master's, just do what I'm doing when I was a bachelor's.
So
With
what you
that
mean
being,
is like the minimum level of education that's required for that role has
mhm,
been elevated from a
to a
bachelor's degree minimum requirement to now a
mhm,
master's degree requirement.
correct,
Okay.
correct. So that's the reason why I was like, if I'm gonna get my master's to compete with these, might as well get my MBA. So that was my thought process. And with now, it's just when I was speaking with some like direct medical directors in the college, with my boss, and with another one, they kind of on a line that's saying majority of them might, if you don't have your master's, you might not. But with this new shift, is experience more worth it now than your master's? So they're just like, as for me right now, their shift has changed to like always been more on the experience side. And yeah, it's still sometimes with education, it's hard to be applicable. It's still just textbook, but there's still nuances where you need to know like fundamental clinical like application. It could be different than it was in the textbook. And just experience when how you're going to manage a situation. They don't teach that in classes. So for me, the when I saw it for an MBA, experience trumped that. To be in the more medical clinician side, I didn't think I needed it. But then I thought about, do I want to be more admin? Do I need that? And then it has crossed my mind. If I did an MBA, it might help me out, but I know a lot of people who don't have MBAs are still in a medical director type of front, and that was just from experience. And again, now networking and just knowing your stuff and having having that tenure of a career trumped just those three letters versus the optics. I'm not in the business world. I don't need that optics.
Do you think that like without an MBA, there's a little bit of a glass ceiling? And if you were to have an MBA, it kind of greases the wheels a little bit where it might make it a little bit easier to get past that?
I think it'll be easier if I want to do more upper admin stuff. So if I'm just strictly talking about collegiate, maybe if I want to be an assistant athletic director and like the medical side of things, that might help. But going back to what an individual wants, that's just a climb of the ladder. But what happens if you don't want that? And I question, do I want that as well? Can I just kind of, we talked back in the first episode was I just want to just get my job done and get this going. Because if I get a higher promotion, then that means there'll be more time away, more responsibilities away to build something else. And so right now, I'm salary wise, I'm okay, but I still want the time, and that for me trumps on me not getting an MBA because I'll lose that time. Because I feel like I don't want to be in that role. I can be, doesn't mean you have to do it. You can and you're capable of doing something, doesn't mean always mean you have to do it.
Absolutely. It's that
Yeah.
balance between ability to do something and the willingness to do something.
Yeah. And I'm not willing. I see my boss and he's phenomenal at what he does and hold him in the highest like regard, but I wouldn't want to deal with the BS he has to deal with. And I really don't. I'm capable of doing it, but do I want to?
Yeah, it's
Um,
those situations where you see it and you're like, that's not my job.
but I think we also talked about again off on the one off. You mentioned as long as you already you use your time and you already get it done and sacrifice that, and then when you need it, you rather be ready than have to get ready again type of approach. Um, but then that's just a gamble. That's just what life is. You're gonna it's there's no easy way or wrong way to say you're gonna go about things. But on my aspect, reverting back, yes, the NBA is not worth it for me. But it can be for somebody else. You might as well kind of gut up and get it done and just have the letters because optically it might benefit you. Unfortunately, the society that we're in that experience that people still live in the ideology of if you don't have the letters in your name that you're not good enough. And that's what kind of pissing me off where you could be like Goodwill Hunting and this like, freaking anyone seen Goodwill Hunting, dude, just freaking a library card will be sufficient enough for people to have a higher education, but you're not, photographic memory. But yeah, what's your takes on it? Because why did you feel like you need to go back into it to if you needed it or not?
Yeah, that's a good point. So I think so when I first was looking into it, because of the cost, I'm looking at it from a purely almost like Excel model. What is the return on
Mm-hmm.
investment? Is it worth it? And so like, if you're giving up 2 years of your life, the opportunity cost of whatever you could have been making those 2 years, and this is the assumption of a full-time program, right? Not a part-time program, not a one that you could do while you're working, things like that. Um, so there's like a certain cost, and then obviously one of the things that a lot of these top programs all publicize are metrics around this is the percentage of people that got jobs upon graduation. This is how much they made upon graduation, right? So like an example, I pulled up UCLA's and their 2021 employment compensation status. Um, Average first year total comp with bonus was 129,
Mm-hmm.
$129,000 a year. The average base salary was $116,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be a byproduct of the fact that I'm already in tech, but that number was pretty achievable pretty quickly without an MBA. So is the ROI there from a salary bump standpoint? Probably not. Then I was thinking like, okay, well, how can this help me kind of accelerate up the ladder per se? And I think something that you said that kind of also got my mind thinking a little bit was I think it depends if the job you're going for is with an individual that you know or a sphere of influence that you know, or it's like a sphere of influence that you don't know. If it's of a group that you don't know, all they can judge you on is by your resume.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're going to look for those things to help basically filter out, air quote, the crappy applicants, where like that MBA helps you float to the top. So in those areas, maybe it could be something a little bit more interesting just because like if you have 1,000 applications, you need to come up with some kind of criteria to filter it down.
Yeah, agree with that one.
But if you're working with a group or an individual, right? This is where it's like it's who you know, not what you know. You're going to get referrals in. And if you're already in a company and you know someone else is a badass, no one's going to care about that MBA because when you're like, no, this person can perform like no other,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, no one's going to be looking at the MBAs or no one's going to even be looking at their school at that point, right? Because now it's that referral or the fact that someone's willing to basically put their reputation on the line to vet someone else for that performance.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of me was like, well, where am I going with my career? Right. So the reason why this came up in this past month was I was connected with one of my buddies and he was letting me know, he's like, hey, I'm looking into an MBA program. I know we've had this conversation before. I know financially it doesn't make sense. What if I could say you could get an MBA and for 2 years it costs you $24,000? And I was like, oh, that's interesting because now it's not a return on investment decision. It's more of a time commitment decision for these extra letters.
Mhm.
Of course, I'm super busy. So like there's still a risk that's associated with that. But then, okay, so like let's say you could basically throw out the cost standpoint. Now, what
Mm,
they'll enable you to do is apply to things both within your circle and outside your circle, and at least have a better shot when you're applying outside your circle. Assuming you
yeah.
ever want to like get out of that, it's good for like changing industries. It's good for maybe you're changing locations in the United States, right? Like maybe your sphere of influence is all within the San Francisco Bay Area, and now that I'm up in Seattle, I have less connections. Um, so I think there's some value that might come to that standpoint when you're applying somewhere blind, I guess is the best
Yeah.
way of putting it.
No, yeah, that's what me and my manager, like my supervisor, talked about. It's like with me and maybe some others, you're fine. But if you don't know anyone and just basing off a resume, then yeah, you're gonna be screwed. And he told me that yeah, he got his master's really late. Like he literally got it 2 years ago, and he's like 50's been in AT for 30 plus years. Like he's been on it, man. So, but he got turned down because of that check mark. And to me, it's like more back on the individuality of things. I want to also expand on time. When you said you're not sacrificing the cost, now you're sacrificing time. What does that mean? So let's just break down a 24-hour day and like on your aspect, would that time be worth it? Because if you go back to school and just work, time slots will you be giving up, and would that be worth it? Which one would have the more REI? ROI? God.
Yeah, you want to go hiking,
Well,
man?
yeah, okay, I don't want to go hiking. Actually, I've been thinking about it. But what is the ROI giving up that time? Like, what would if you were giving up working on the house or even this podcast? That might financially be an investment versus. So, what were you willing to give up?
I mean, I think the reason why I didn't apply is because the things that I'm currently involved with are things that I don't want to give up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's ultimately maybe the deadline I think just passed, and it's like, okay, cool, this is always next year. But if I didn't have the house, like, fixing it up, renovating it, having to just spend some mind space over there, I might have probably done it. It's if I had a little bit of free time, I usually fill it with something. And so then it would have been maybe something a little bit more viable. But just where I'm at currently with the things I'm involved with, I didn't see that the potential upside was significantly higher than the current track that I'm on.
No, I agree with that. So,
But I mean, we've had some close friends. They've all gotten their MBAs recently.
no, they did,
So
and we never really follow up on like, did it really elevate them? Like, I think, did you? Have you?
no, I actually haven't. Like,
So
was it worth it or
yeah, was it? There might be a follow up on this. Do some digging. They like you more, or they remember you more. I don't know.
I don't know. I didn't get invited to their wedding, so
Oh wait, well actually, yeah, one
there
of
you
them actually
go.
did pretty
Yeah.
well. He did get a pay bump from it. But again, that's just the industry you're in. Like, will it benefit you? Unless
It
you
could be
get
the
something that's
progressiveness of the industry as well. Some of the
yeah.
older industries are it's just the way they are, right?
Mm-hmm. So then I want to add on to that is like a pivot, but is an MBA versus doing certifications, which one's more valuable? So, for example, if you just do a 3 month boot camp to elevate a skill set, um, is that more worth it? The reason being of just talking this subject, I had this conversation yesterday actually with a few athletes. They asked me, I'm a comm major. What the hell am I going to do with my degree? And they were looking for like certification, like certificates or credential programs. Like if I do like just coding or or do business analytics at a Harvard like class, that gets me a certification and more credibility. Is that more valuable than go and get your master's? And to me, it did because it's something more tangible, something more specific, knowing that you can execute the job. But I never had to be in that side. So I really want to hear, as you since you're doing hiring, would you rather would you value more the overall degree or skill sets?
Mm, so I think it depends on the way that the application's coming in. Sometimes you can't
Mm-hmm.
even put a certification in there, so it's going to be
Yeah.
viewed equally to someone else that just also has a degree. Depending on the roles, sometimes the degree doesn't matter, right? It's been put in as a way, like I said, if you have 1,000 applications, how are you going to filter it down? Because you're not going to spend time reading 1,000 applications, right? And so you just put it in. You're like, do you have a college degree? Yes. Cool. That filters it down an extra 300. Now I only have to look at like 600 or 700 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's if they're going through a normal application tracking system, right? So you're applying through Workday or you're applying through Lever or Greenhouse or whatever those other ones are. There's so many of them. I think in those cases that helps you get through the gates, right? In the same way that like
Mm-hmm.
having an MBA will be like a check mark that that system is going to recognize and acknowledge. One thing that you had said is like, is getting a certification that shows that you could execute put you higher above someone else? I don't think a certification does that or proves that. I think what actually proves that is like broad, like a broad statement. I think anyone and everyone can make a portfolio of some way because everyone in some way, shape, or form has had worked on a project or solved some sort of problem.
Mm-hmm.
You can anonymize the details. Like you don't have to talk about the specific client. You don't have to talk about like maybe some specific numbers, right? You can maybe give broad strokes around what it is, but putting something together like that to display your work, that shows taking initiative, right? That's going to set someone else a little bit more apart to where, oh, this is maybe a little interesting. Maybe I'll look into this. Oh, this is how they put this together. Like maybe they built it themselves. Maybe they didn't build it themselves. Maybe they fibered it out. I don't know. But it creates another, especially with like LinkedIn like people that send me stuff on LinkedIn. Like, don't send me a message on LinkedIn with an empty profile, first of all, right? And then if you have some kind of portfolio with it, now it shows that you like can take initiative beyond just like, hey, I sent you a message. I mean, that's a huge initiative anyways, is sending someone a message because a lot of people don't do that either. But if you really like, you also have to realize you're probably not the only one that's sending someone a message. So you have to
Mm-hmm.
constantly think, what's that next step that you can do that's going to set you even further apart from another person that did that?
Yeah.
And I think that that's what really starts to filter people apart is like,
That portfolio aspect.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, thinking about like all the random things that we've done when we got laid off or had some extra free time or things like that, it's like, yeah, it's kind of cool if you have something to point to and you could be like, yeah, like in 2020, I lost my job and we spun up a clean room cleaning business. And the next person is, what? Like, you're in tech doing business operations. Like, what do you mean you spun up clean room cleaning company in your free time? Right? Like, that all by itself already piques some level of interest to
Like,
someone.
what is going on here?
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, oh, yeah. Like, I had to learn all about like HEPA filters and air pressure and flow and like particles and like system design. And you're like, did you go to school for this? And I'm like, no, man, I got a degree in MIS. Like, this is nothing
Figured it out.
similar. Yeah.
Just figured
So,
it out.
right, like those are the things that actually spark interest and actually can have a conversation around like, this is kind of random, right?
Weird.
Yeah. You're an athletic trainer, but like you open the box of like, let's talk photography. And like you have to be able to create the sliver that can start the conversation.
Mm-hmm. No, okay, I agree with that. So back to the overarching question: is an MBA worth it? After this discussion, I still say no.
Yeah, I'm still in the boat that's no, it's not worth it. I think that if you're truly someone that can go out and execute, an MBA is not needed.
How about in like these? Gonna just before we fully close this door. It's like even with like big four companies, like when you work for Deloitte back in the day, like even higher like tier companies, like was an MBA, did you need one? Again, not playing the game and knowing you want where your end destination wanted to. Again, knowing this is when someone needs to know where they're going.
Yeah. So the thing you have to think about when it comes to like consulting or professional services or things like that, when you're submitting bids, you're basically submitting your resume. And when you're
Mhm.
submitting your resume, that's almost, unless you know the person you're giving a bid to at that client office, they're going to be looking at resumes of team A and the resumes of team B. And so you're back in the boat of they don't know who you are and you need whatever you could put on a piece of paper to set you apart. Right. It's like if you were going to spend $50,000 on consulting company A or $50,000 on consulting company number letter B, one of them has a full team of Stanford grads and the other team has a full team of schools that you have never heard of. Where are you going to put your 50K?
Good point.
Right. So again, it's how and who your audience is on whether or not that MBA might be worth it or not.
Yeah. There's an asterisk to this. So we both say no, but there's an asterisk to it.
Yeah, if you're gonna play yourself in that game, like, and you're
You
cold
have to
calling
play the game.
people,
You have to
like,
play the
oh
game.
yeah, absolutely. Especially if you didn't go to a school that like holds a ton of weight.
Oh my God.
I didn't say
I didn't say it
it.
either. I don't want to say it.